Heyo, Plaidman here. So we're doing kind of a different thing. I wanted to do that book review that I was talking to you about. Not the one I was talking to you about last night, although that was wonderful, or yesterday. Triplanetary. I'll do a separate book review on that. Because frankly, if you like science fiction, you definitely should read that book. Anyways, I'll do a review about that later. But actually, I wanted to do something a little bit more educational. And I even ran into this earlier today when I was talking to a lady about her children, and we were talking about kids and reading books and stuff like that. And I wouldn't necessarily classify this as like a kid's book, but it is certainly something that I feel like any child should read. And her children were 14 and 9, or 10, and I feel like at that age, they definitely should be able to read this book. So I'm going to put it up. This is it. The Richest Man in Babylon. I got my finger in the way. Do I have it? Yeah. It's so weird because I look at the video and I'm like, why does it look backwards? But anyways, The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason. Okay, so why is this book so amazing? I think there's different variants of it as far as different prints of it. But the reason why I find it amazing, and I've read it, I want to say I read it every year. I don't know if that's actually accurate. I'd certainly read it close to every year. The reason why is because what the book talks about is to how educate the average person on how to deal with finances. The basic one that pretty much everyone has probably already heard of, which is like 10% of what you make is for you to keep, which they go into some detail, but not like extra. It's a weird concept. It's like, well, no, everything I make is is for me to keep, right? Everything I make. It's, obviously, I work a job, what I get, that's my money. Not exactly though, because technically you got to pay bills and you got to pay for this and you got to do that. So if you really look at it, no, the money you're making is not actually yours. It's actually going to all these other things, which is kind of a weird way to look at money in general if you're not used to it. I'm frankly used to it. I was kind of maybe not raised on these concepts, but generally I was aware of elements of it, if you will. And the concept of like, okay, you got to look at your money and like, am I making enough to survive? Do I need to lower my bills? Do I need to raise how much I'm making? Do I need to ask for more? Am I worth more to ask? Yada, yada, yada. So why I love that book so much and why I would actually absolutely suggest it to anybody. And frankly, it makes a great gift without like slapping someone in the face saying, you need to handle your finances. I wouldn't give it to someone unless you've read it, by the way, because otherwise that might be kind of whatever. But the reason why it's so amazing is because it's very, very simple and very, very straightforward in how it does its lessons. And they're not really lessons, they're just stories. So effectively you're there and you're reading it and it's a story in ancient Babylon, okay? About a guy who's really wealthy. And then there's other people who are not as wealthy. And they're like asking him, hey, how do we get more wealthy? How do we make more money? And he's basically saying, well, let me tell you, this is what I do. If you want to get wealthy, do this and do this and do this. And so it's kind of fascinating because in a weird way, it's like fictional in nature, in the sense that you have people you don't know in a time that doesn't exist right now, or like, it's time that's not now, it's in the past. And they're telling you, hey, this is how this wealthy person is telling you, hey, this is how to make money. Now, it's not a point by point as in like, if you do this, invest in Apple before, or this is the new thing you need to invest in. It's not stock advice, okay? And it's not necessarily saying, oh, buy real estate. That's the only thing you could do. It basically helps provide you the fundamental rules that are the huge difference between somebody who works a 9 to 5 and is always kind of struggling and living paycheck to paycheck. And yeah, they have money saved, but that's it. Their life is just kind of what their life is. Versus somebody who they're taking their money and they're investing it to make more money. And then they're taking the money they got from the investment and investing that to make more money. They're effectively using their money to make more money. And those people tend to live a different type of life. And oftentimes it's easy for people like myself or others who are not making that kind of money. And we're like, well, that's not fair. I work as hard or harder than that person. Like, why am I not making that kind of money? Like, why, I don't know, pick your favorite basketball, football star or whatever. You're like, why am I not making as much? And there's a lot of argument to be made for that. I actually, I've heard of people say this where they're like, hey, it's not fair that sports stars are making hundreds of millions of dollars in their career in 10 years, whereas your average teacher is only making like $50,000 a year, or $60,000 or whatever it is. And policemen are making, you know, similar amounts or less. And that's even hazard pay, right? And so there's this like, well, why? And that's a whole thing which I would love to chat about, and really not what the book is about. The book is about, you have people who are not like affluent. They're normal, you know, blue collar people, and they're trying to figure out, how do I get out of the financial situation I'm in? And they're afforded an opportunity to talk to someone who's very wealthy, and that very wealthy person is giving them advice on how he became wealthy, how he came from a situation of not having wealth, you know, and then doing and what he did to get to his position of being the wealthiest person in his city, which is the equivalent of like, you know, Los Angeles and New York in ancient times, right? Babylon. If you're not aware of it, just look it up. It's awesome. Anyhow, so highly suggest. I kind of wanted to just do a short one. If you have not read the book, definitely worth spending like $10 at Barnes & Noble or buying on Amazon or whatever, because it is by far one of the most simple, straightforward, educational tools that I frequently use to help get myself from where I was with zero money and and finding sneaky ways. Like I used to go to El Pollo Loco, and they had this, you'd buy something and then they'd give you the receipt that said $1 off. And at that time they had $1 food items. So I would then take the receipt, do the survey online, and go order something that was $1. And, I have to pay the tax on it, so I'd have to pay 8 cents or whatever. But it's like, they basically got something for free for 8 cents because I needed to eat. That was how I would do it. And whatever. So I went from that to kind of where I'm at now, which is I'm in a much different financial spot, and I've worked hard to get there, and I'm actually trying really hard and pushing myself past my comfort zone to do more and do better and faster, so that I can kind of enjoy some of my later life and not need to necessarily work all the time. And that's a separate thing that, I don't know, I feel like I'll talk about later, as far as, can we all make enough money? Because I think there's this conception that, oh, there can only be rich and there can only be poor. And I think that's simply because there are people who are unwilling to learn and be smart about stuff. And simply, like, you give some people, like, there are people out there, you give them $1 million and they just burn through it in a year or whatever. Whereas with their before, they would have made $1 million in 10 years or 20 years, and they would have spent it. So you give it to them in 1 year, and instead of living 10 years of life, they burn through it all in 1 year, thinking they deserve all these nice things, and maybe they do, but now they're broke, and now they have to go and work another job again. And this happens time and time again. And so I feel like everyone can benefit and get value from this. Even if you're wealthy, I bet you dollars to donuts, you probably do, if not all, most of the lessons, if you will, in this. Anyways, so check it out. Thank you. Tell me what you think. I know it kind of went all over the place. Honestly, it's just so much fun because it's not contemporary. It doesn't just diagrams. The stories are kind of cute and like simple and straightforward. They're not trying to sell you something. It's not some plan. It's not like, oh, spend $3.99 on this and then you can get wealthy. It's just like, no, these are just interesting stories that have anecdotal and honestly evidential, I don't know if that's a word, but like instances that you can look in your life and be like, that makes sense. So check it out. Thank you for tuning in. Plaid Man out. Talk to you later. Bye.